So it is March 15th, 2022, and I received in the mail today a refill on some Himalayan pink salt. I think this is a 2 pound bag. Last time I had ordered a 4 pounds. This is a 2 pound bag. It may look backwards on camera right there. So the refill of the same variety that I purchased in the past, but half the amount. Actually, maybe it's a quarter of the amount. It lasts quite a while. This probably would last me half a year, or maybe a third of a year. About 3 months or so, maybe longer. 4 months worth, maybe in this bag. 4 to 5 months. Almost half a year's worth. So, see the granules on the inside. Now, Himalayan pink salt is actually mined from the Punjab, Pakistan region of the Himalayan mountains. It's mined. It's not from the sea, I don't believe. No. Which could become less frequently available in the future. It's not sustainable, where it's not like you can deforest and transplant let's say palm trees or for their palm oil, that would be normally found in, let's say, peanut butters and nut butter spreads as a ingredient to retain the oil, or for oil retention, where to prevent oil separation of the naturally occurring oils found in the peanuts that are in the peanut butter from separating. They use palm oil, and they had to deforest and order to plant new palm trees, and that was a sustainability of that type of crop was an environmental problem. It became an environmental problem, just like Himalayan pink salt and the demand for its 84 mineral content per serving, which is very nutritional and very healthy. The demand, it could become a problem, where later on they may have a restriction on the exporting of Himalayan pink salt, because of the demand, where some people may, like in my case, through my mother's father's side of the family, his immediate family was from Prague, Czechoslovakia, and I'm not the only one who's noticed the dominant genetic traits within some of my mother's offspring, or my brother and sister. One of my sisters, not the one that currently lives with me, the one who lives with someone else now, who's married, her facial features resemble that of a Korean girl's. And my brother, who's married and out of the house, he has a similar pattern with his facial hair as me. And the shape of his head and facial jawline and cheekbones resemble that of someone who's Mongolian, whereas mine is more, let's say, Tibetan. And that is from my mother's father's side of the family, where when he became elderly and older, he looked and resembled that of an older Tibetan male, So In my case, I if I shaved down my sideburns, and also in my early 20s, I had this crescent type of patchiness of where no facial hair develops. And if you look at, that's a Japanese male trait, that pattern that develops. It occurs commonly in that of those who have who are part Japanese or who are easily identifiable as Japanese. They have that type of thing that goes on there in their sideburns. So, anyways, that's probably because the Mongol conquest that occurred in history, and they may have settled in Prague, Czechoslovakia, because if you look up ramen noodle in Czechoslovakia, Prague, there's a lot of soba ramen noodle restaurants, or ones that have that as their name to their restaurant, ramen soba, or soba noodle. And but they also use the word ramen. And hey, mom, wasn't your father's favorite food, wasn't it ramen noodle?
I guess part of his favorites.
Yeah, he always wanted ramen noodle, right?
That's as he got older.
As he got older? We're sure about that? Maybe it was something he was starting to eat again, just like he probably ate during his childhood, but in his when let's say you were younger, and when he was younger, for some period of time he didn't eat that as his favorite. He may have went back to it because it was his childhood favorite type of food.
His favorite was noodles, period.
Noodles, okay. Noodles originated from China, right? Before they wound up in Europe. You know that, right?
They were European.
No, 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 no. Europe was introduced to noodles and pasta supposedly from Marco Polo's conquest.
I had the shakes like I'm coming over.
Anyways. I'll sneeze. I also got my carrageenan, which could be useful on both sides of the family because... Actually, not both sides of the family. Both sides of my mother's parents, because my mother's mother was Irish, and carrageenan is also known as Irish moss, and that it has a characteristic element to its nutritional value, where one of the elements found in carrageenan has a chemical structure similar to that of iodide, and my mother's father, who has some type of Asian dominant genetic trait that passed through my mother's offspring into some of her children, like me, my brother, and one of my other sisters who doesn't live with us, the way I described, where the dominant genetic traits got expressed as we got older, and that we have resemblance of that of Asian characteristics. All right. I also have a thyroid condition where the iodide enriched foods that normally would be derived from, let's say, the ocean, where it comes from, like it would be either from sea salt, and some sea salt that's sold in the store now is reduced in iodide, or is said is not a good source of iodide, where naturally it would normally be a good source of iodide, but for some reason, through the pasteurization process of the sea salt, the iodide may be reduced or removed in some cases nowadays. not too long ago, like 10 years ago, it it wasn't advertised as not a good source of iodide, which is unusual, and it's probably because of the pasteurization process of the sea salt.
Maybe you were nervous about the package being open.
Where 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, when I started taking thyroid medication because I have hypothyroidism, my lab work came back with better results when I switched to making homemade vegan meals with by adding sea salt to them in place of eating the foods that are boxed and packaged, or one would probably get on their french fries is table salt, or the artificially synthetic version of sodium chloride. I think it is NaCl or something. Table salt. It's not, which is iodized. They iodize it, thinking that it's going to be beneficial, but it can create what's called a thyroid storm and create their thyroid become overactive easily if they take thyroid medications and stuff like that. So it could become obviously a problem. Even if they don't take thyroid medication, it could throw the thyroid out of whack. Where my lab work came back better when I switched to making homemade vegan meals and using naturally derived sea salt, you know. But carrageenan, I notice, helps when I use it as a food additive ingredient. I feel better almost instantly when I use a little bit of carrageenan in the drink, some of the drinks that I make for myself. Okay, and so that's how on both sides. My mother's father was diagnosed with hypothyroidism about 10 years after I was. Mom,
What?
what year was your father diagnosed as being hypothyroid and having to take thyroid medication?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
It was several years to maybe a decade after I was diagnosed with it, right?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
I can't answer that.
We found out years later.
May have been earlier.
I know, but he wasn't he wasn't diagnosed with it. They didn't detect it until like a decade after I was diagnosed with it.
That's when they decided to tell me about it.
Okay, whatever. Same thing. Doesn't matter. Anyways, and I got my acai berry powder here, and the naturally occurring iodine that gives it its purple color is said to help those with hypothyroidism. Okay, not necessarily a thyroid condition, because some people have an overactive thyroid where this could become a problem. In my case, it's usually underactive. Okay, so, and it does help when I add this to my lemonade drink that I make. I use about a third of a level teaspoon worth of the acai berry powder. I had also ordered goji berry powder, but the package was open. It wasn't sealed all the way, so I can't use that. Thankfully, I have some that's left over. Okay. Yeah. So that's good enough for this recording.
What are you doing, Bridget?
Now, what I was saying was the issue with the Himalayan pink salt, and luckily that I'm saying in the future they may they may have to throttle the exporting and importing of Himalayan pink salt, and those who really need it, like if they have a genetic dominant trait, like if I was able to prove I'm part Asian or whatever, and that let's say I really need it, they may, allow someone like me to continue purchasing something like this, where in the future they may put a restriction on something like that with those who may not really need it. They may not be able to get the Himalayan pink salt. I don't know. You never know.